Do you ever get on Google Maps and just go back and look at some of the places you used to live just to see if they still look the same, if they're still there? Well, I was doing that yesterday, and which reminded me of an event that happened in a particular house that I lived in. Now, this was back in 1990. I was living in Painesville, Ohio, which is a suburb east of Cleveland. I didn't live in the best neighborhood in the world, but the rent was probably $250 a month for a big 3-bedroom house. And a lot of them homes in that area and on the East Coast are all big 3-story houses, with a basement. This house was the same, and an attic. Well, this particular day, I guess I had a curiosity itch or something. I knew there was a hatch in the closet, a little access panel for an attic. So I got a flashlight. I said, well, I'm going to see if there's anything up there. So I go in there, and obviously I can see that I got to get a chair or a ladder or something because I can't reach it. Older homes have high ceilings, and they did that so in the summertime the heat would rise and you wouldn't have to, because nobody had air conditioning obviously when they were built. This home would have probably been built around 1920, somewhere in that area. A lot of homes were. Might even been one of them Sears and Roebuck houses. Who knows? So anyway, I get this hatch open. I go get a dining room chair, and I still got a tippy toe. And I get the hatch up, and I poke my head through, and it stinks up there because, well, it's an attic, And this whole house, the house was creepy. All older houses are always seem a little creepy anyway. So I get a flashlight, and I'm looking up in there, and I see something. I mean, there really was nothing up there that I could see, but I seen this one brown piece, just a brown object. But it was 10 feet back. There was no way I was going to reach it. And there was no way I was crawling up in there because the hatch wasn't very big to begin with. You wouldn't have got big boxes or anything like that up in there. I don't even know why it was in there. So I decided I'm going to get my fishing pole. I put a treble hook on that. If you don't know what a treble hook is, it's just a hook that has like 3 barbs out of it. And you just throw it and, you can latch on to something. Well, after a few attempts, I latched onto it and got it towards me, and I picked it up. It was covered in dust. It obviously been up there many, many years, and I could see it was a woman's purse. So, if you're going to find something, hey, a purse full of money. Nope, didn't have any money in it. So I took it down there. Yep, didn't have any money in it. Did have some change. Actually wheat pennies and some nickels and, probably 26 cents. And I opened it up and there was a wallet inside. A woman's, I guess that's what you women call wallets, a woman's wallet. And in there, I'm thinking again, there's going to be some money. No, a lot of photographs. A lot of photographs were in there. Children, there was like a few family type pictures, husband and wife. And there was a driver's license. Now, driver's licenses, they didn't always have your photograph on them. They don't look like they do today. They were sometimes just a piece of cardboard, piece of paper with your information on it and a driver's license number. And that was it. That was the case for this. And the date on it, the issue date was 1961. And it had the guy's name. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was not unique. I mean, it was not common. It was a unique name. And it was issued in 1961. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to look his name up in the phone book just by chance to see, and it did have his birth date. He was born in 1918. I do remember that. And my grandfather, he was still alive and well. He was born in 1919, so I figured, well, obviously he could still be alive. That's. So I just grabbed the phone book because everybody had phone books in 1990. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have any of that. So I look up the name in the phone book, and sure enough, there is the guy's name, and it still has the same address that it had on his driver's license. But why is a man's driver's license in a purse? Okay, even, back then, even if he was like that, he wasn't going to walk around with a purse in them days. They didn't get away with that. Unless he kept it under his shirt or something. But I called the number. And after about 3 or 4 rings, a lady answers. And I said, we'll just call him Charles Wilson for the sake of this video. I said, yeah, is Charles around? She says, no, he passed away a few months back. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, well, then maybe you're the person I need to speak with anyway. Do you remember ever losing a brown purse with a wallet full of photographs? Sorry, my nose itches. With a wallet full of photographs inside. And there was a pause. And then she says, yes, it was a long time ago, but I'd had a purse stolen. And I said, well, what if I told you I had that purse? I found it in my attic, and I only live a few blocks away from you. And it has all these photos, obviously probably from your family, that you probably haven't seen. And I said, the driver's license is a man's. I assume that's your husband. She said, yes. He would lose it all the time or lose his wallet, so I kept it in my purse because we were always together anyway. I said, okay, well, that makes sense. And I said, I'll tell you what, even back then people were cautious. I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop this off at the police station. You or someone else can go pick it up. That way we don't have to interact or any of that. I said, I can assure you I am not the guy who stole it because I wasn't even born until 5 years later. So it isn't me. I just found it, and I didn't even tell her where I found. I just said I found it in the attic, and I'm not far. I didn't give her my address. So obviously, I never heard back anything. Police kind of looked at me like a little weird at first, and then they understood. Anything you do in a police station, they're always suspicious. And they're like, it's stolen? I said, yeah, it was stolen in the early 60s, man. I wasn't even alive. I just found it. Well, where did you find it? They're asking me all these questions. I said, look, man, a house down there I live in. It was in the attic. I was nosy. I got up there to see if there was anything in there. So, ended up leaving it. Also, I've found there was a huge dining room in this house, and it had a corner built-in hutch. The women will put their fine china teacups and such in there. But on top of that, it had like one of them fancy facades on top, but then there's the top of the shelf that you couldn't see, and there was a big Bible sitting on that, like a family Bible. No name in it, nothing. And I did ask her, did she have a Bible like that? And she said not that she recalled. So I figured it wasn't hers because she didn't live in that house. So the Bible would have most likely came from somebody who had lived there in the past. And whoever had lived there in the past probably needed that Bible because they stole that lady's purse and then went and got the money out or whatever and threw it up in the attic and forgot about it until I come along and discover it and get her back. But if it hadn't been for the photos, I would have probably just threw it in the trash. But, family photos, they were probably photos in there of people that may have passed away or photos that there were no duplicates to. people will like to get those kind of things back. They don't care about the money, anything like that. I did keep the 27 cents. I will tell you that I kept the 27 cents as a finder's fee. But I never found who the Bible belonged to. I just left it there. I had my own Bible. I just left it there because it was a creepy house. I figured that Bible, wasn't doing any harm where it sat. So maybe somebody found it years later that needed it. Don't know. But that was just a cool story so sometimes, getting on there and looking back at some of the places you used to live will trigger those memories. Cause honestly, I haven't thought of that in many, many years. And I'm sure that woman is long gone by now, cause probably in her 60s or 70s at that point, it would be well over 100 now, but whoever she left, the photos to, got those photos now, and they live on. Better than sitting in a closet rotten where nobody sees them, or they said another 100 years, nobody even knows who any of those people were. But I thought it was cool because they had lived in the same house, all those years and was still there other than him passing away, but that's the story. So, hey, get on Google Maps and look at some of them old because you can zoom right in now and look at these old places you used to live. Maybe places you used to work. A lot of it's changed. Thanks for watching. Happy trails.